co-founder and managing director at Sophron Engineering.
Hello everyone. I love to start a presentation always with a question or two questions in that case. I don't need to ask you if you're aware about climate change because it is but I want to ask you just to get an idea how important this is to you. So please raise your hand for one question. So let's say, do you believe that climate change is already affecting your life a lot? So raise your hands if you think it's happening. Okay, quite a lot. Don't know even if I have to ask the second question, but I'll ask it still. Do you think this might get in future worse? Okay, I think we are pretty much aligned on that. And I don't want to speak too much on the, let me just see if it works. Too much about sustainability because we all are aware we need it. I just want to give some insights. Then I would love to talk about what we can do as data scientists to change something, to fight climate change. And I have also prepared a showcase of a data science project that works with sustainability, where the goal is to reduce CO2. In the end, if there is time, I would also outline why I believe Armenia is a good place to be a global leader for sustainability. And then in the end we can talk a little bit what we can do together to create this vision that Armenia becomes a leader in sustainability. So please be aware, although I'm not Armenian, sometimes I speak a little bit patriotic Armenian because you guys really made me this way. I enjoy being here a lot, and so let's say, please apologize if some of the things are a little bit, patriotic. So let's come to the main problem. As I said, we're all aware about it. Climate change is happening. And there is still, some people say it's all a hoax, and there are people who are saying, well, climate change, there has always been different fluctuation in climate. Some people say, well, in the Middle Ages, from 800 to 1200, we already had a lot of more hotter climate and everything. But this is what a statistic shows. So there is no doubt that in the end, with high CO2 emissions and other gases, we warm up the planet. And this is the scary thing. So because this is, let's say, a projection. So I have this from the IPCC, one authority on climate change. This is the forecast if we don't do anything to if we do a lot against climate change. And if we really manage to heat up the planet for 5 degrees Celsius or more, the next generation will be, well, thankful for it, because in a way we will have all the consequences from dryness, flooding, melting of ice caps, and so on, so hunger and so on. So in a way, we all agree we have to do something. So the question is now, what? And everyone is aware about it, and this is the summary of the Paris Agreement, where all the states agree that until 2050 we have to come to zero emissions. So this is agreement, zero emissions. Almost every country signed it. Now also with Joe Biden in the power, US signed it. So this is a very ambitious goal. If you know how much CO2 emissions we have at the moment, it's really, really ambitious. So now we come to the big question. So you might wonder, this guy tells us a lot about sustainability, climate change. But aren't we in a talk for data science? Well, yes, you are. And we could, of course, So what does it have to do with data science when I talk about sustainability? I assume some of you are entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneurs or want to work for innovative companies. The Gartner report always shows what's the hype cycle. So let's say some years ago, if you want to create something new, you would invest into image recognition, so then create companies like Pixar did it, and now it's big. But if you today focus on creating a new company with image recognition or anything with, it might not work anymore because the company is already there. So there's always this kind of things that innovation change, and I want to focus on this one, AI-driven innovation. So I had a talk with the Gartner people, and they all said, if you want to create something new and something innovative, see how AI can change as a product something substantial. And before we think about how we can use AI for sustainability, we should also think about what is it actually that creates CO2 emission? What is it that makes our planet more warm? Because in the end, if we, as a data scientist, you are aware that you have to first define the problem, and then you think about how you can solve it with data. So most of the people might think, it depends very a lot, so some people research more, some people research less. But when I talk with people, a lot of the people think, okay, everything will be fine once we get rid of coal, fossil fuels. Everything will be fine if everyone drives electric car. But the first thing I want to highlight is that CO2 emissions have the origin in many things. So if we deforest lands to have land for the room for the cattle, and this cattle produces a lot of gases because of course they have fertilizers. If we build houses, there is cement, so there is in everything almost, and this is scary sometimes when you look where everything CO2 emissions are created. So there is huge amount of CO2 emissions. But this is also a huge opportunity for everyone, because in a way, what we can do is we can find use cases where we can do something. And here are some ideas what we can do as a data science before I come to the use case. So the point is, yeah, getting around, what we could do for getting around. We could improve logistics. We could see that when we have an idea that we have to travel less. So there is a lot of ideas when you think, okay, what can I do that we have to move around where we can use data. Fine. I have been talking with a lot of people who are in the building industry, and many companies at the moment trying to get the carbon out of the cement productions. And there you have a huge amount of possibilities to explore the data, to collect data, to find out what can you do to reduce CO2 emissions. So there is really tons of things in where we need the help of data scientists. You find tons of use cases about sustainability in the AI and the internet. This is just a small part. I want to focus on one thing that we did. And I want to tell you a little bit about the project. So this project comes from a EU research project funded by the EU, and it works with 6 cities in Northern Europe. So the question is, the EU is very keen on reducing carbon emissions, and they said, okay, we have a proposal, so whoever has some ideas what we can do, get some research funds. And we got the research money. But before I go into I want to again describe the problems. So what we try to do is we try to reduce the CO2 emissions in countries. But here again, a little quiz to warm it up, questions. So I have here 4 different cities. Where do you think do they get their energy from? So let's say for electricity. First one is Copenhagen. Where do you think what's the main energy provider?
Maybe coal station.
Coal is one, yeah. The coal is almost everywhere a little bit. Renewables, what do you think? Wind, yeah, very true, wind. This is Reykjavik. What do you think is there interesting?
Geothermal.
Geothermal, absolutely right. So Reykjavik is a paradise for energy because it has geothermal, completely correct. and also a lot of water with the waterfalls. So this is like the Icelandic people are really worried that some people, the waterfalls are gone at some point. Dubai, quite clear I guess? Solar, yeah. And the last one is Paris?
Nuclear.
Nuclear, absolutely, yeah. We have some energy experts here, that's great. So you have tons of different, so then all the cities have a different energy sources where they get energy from. And our question was, how do we can reduce the amount of energy produced? And so the first challenge is, of course, we have different energy source providers, which means completely different data, completely different behavior. And basically what we wanted to do was we wanted to create a way to forecast CO2 emissions. So we said the interesting thing is for us how much CO2 emissions are produced by the cities when adding renewable energy or not. And of course this is the key challenge that we want to address, because the biggest pain point with renewable energy is it's volatile. So you sit at home, you work, and if you're completely sourced only by renewable energy, well, suddenly the electricity is gone and you can't do anything anymore. I mean, okay, we can say in Armenia we are used to that, but in a way, of course, we don't want that. So there is something, and this is always the problem, that you have this kind of energy where there is no energy, reliable energy source from the renewables, that you have to again switch back to the fossil fuels. And we thought, okay, what can we change about it? And we said, why don't we store all the energy that we get into second life batteries? This is a Tesla battery, by the way, from a partner. So what we did, so we stored the energy into these batteries. We said we take the batteries from the electric cars, the used batteries. Maybe for the cars they already reduced a little bit the capacity, but it would be perfectly fine for houses. And we simply let's store the energy we get from renewables when the surplus in the batteries, and then we release it again when there is no renewable energy source. So because we can basically with that reduce CO2 consumption. And this works perfectly fine. So basically there is sun, you charge the battery, then there is no sun anymore, you release the battery. And so that the question for us was then, how can we forecast the CO2 consumption in a city? Because then we went into detail. The first thing we found out, we have to, when we want to align the charging cycles with CO2 emissions, of course we can't rely on that everyone has installed renewable power. So let's say, okay, if you have a solar panel, it's clear. But in the end, you get the electricity from your provider, and this provider gives you a mix of different sources. So maybe it's a little bit coal, it's a little bit wind. It depends really what they are. So the challenge was to find out when are the times we want to charge the batteries with because there's a high percentage of renewable energy, or in other words, low CO2 emission, and we discharge again when there is a high CO2 emission because there's low renewable energy. So we used LSTM, neural networks, and other methods like the XJ boost, and we tried to find out the features that really define this model. What the first thing we learned is, as every project, it's hugely difficult to get all the data, because what we saw, all these different cities, they have different data standards, the data is inaccurate, but I want to show you the results of Copenhagen, what we found out. So first of all, we found out using the analytical models, it's really clear to be able to create a model of CO2 emissions per day and to make a really accurate forecast. And of course the question is, what is it that affects this forecast? We also of course explored the price. How is price related to energy consumption or energy production, and we found out that of course and this is again Denmark, that the more wind you have, the cheaper it gets. So the wind speed at the moment affects the price. And of course, holidays and everything also affects this, because when there's holiday, people are gone. And then you can really easily predict the pricing. So if you have a pricing model, these are the main formulas that you can find out. And the main challenge that we also found out is to copy this model for each city. So let's say what works in Denmark might not work in Paris or in London or in Helsinki, wherever you want to go. And of course, this is also then, there's of course a lot of things where you say, well, you're in Denmark, it's logical. The temperature, if there's a high temperature, then people will heat less, so there is less energy consumption, so this will affect the CO2 emission. But it was pretty nice to see how this kind of data can then be, in the end, integrated in an XG boost model. So, I'm quite happy to answer some questions afterwards about the project, how it works, because I think this kind. But here I want to also give a statement why I believe that Armenia could be a very interesting hub for producing solutions for sustainability. When we think about Armenia, we very often think about the slide on the left. So we have tons of solar resource. Yeah, of course, we know it. I mean, everyone who spends summer in Yerevan knows that it can get quite hot and quite sunny. But the amazing thing in Armenia is basically we have all renewable energy sources where we can that we can explore. So the right one I have from a research about geothermal, and we see that in Gritskor and Orkaka there are quite interesting energy sources that we could explore and leverage. We have then, of course, also a nuclear plant that could be also part of the sustainability part. But the most interesting thing is that we really have a lot of different climate zones. We can experiment with ice storage, we can experiment with solar, we can experiment with wind, with water, so everything is already here. And then here also one other thing that is really important. So there's another thing, I mean, of course, for that I don't need a picture, just need to look in the room. We have the data science capacity. So people are really interested to do something with data science and AI. So why don't we use this and explore this, use this brain power to explore this. And here I want to give you another idea without commenting it more in detail. So what would it mean if we increase the value of sustainability and the value of fossil fuel changes? So this is one thing everyone should think about. What would this mean for Armenia in security and foreign policy? If then suddenly renewable energy becomes more important than oil. So this is what we try to build is a competence center here. So this is something where if people are interested, joining it. So what we have, this is in a very early stage phase. We say Armenia has to become a leader in sustainability because, first of all, it's the market of the future. It concerns us all, and we have the brain power and the resources. So why not doing it? And if you're interested in this, you can contact me. So we're trying to set up collaboration projects with a research institute like AUA. We have been talking with the government. We invite, of course, every individuals and also other companies to join us. But we believe that there's a strong capability. So here you find me on LinkedIn or on this email address. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to hear your questions.
Microphone.
I think Franz, you had a question.
Thanks for the talk. So can you please go back to the slides with this feature importance charts?
Yeah.
So these were for different cities, or?
Yeah, this is for Copenhagen.
Okay, this is for Copenhagen. So I want to kind of understand what this chart means. So
The feature, this is
why
the
temperature defines, for example, CO2 emission? It means that if temperature is very low, people...
Exactly. So when the temperature is very low, people need more heat, and use more energy. Sorry.
But also maybe the other way around also, right? In very hot summer, they turn on the ACs and...
Yeah, exactly. So
But this doesn't show the direction.
yeah,
it just shows
it's
that-
about cold here. So the temperature has a huge influence, but it's more related to the cold. This is something that doesn't come out here of the graph. But yeah, but this was one of the key insights of the research project, that a model is unique to a city. So this means if you do the same exercise in Yerevan or Dubai, or you would have different factors that influence your model.
And what does not work? Precipitation, conditions clear.
Yeah, so this was something, so that conditions clear, this was, I think, nebular, as far as I remember. So holiday had less impact on the carbon emissions than on the price, for instance. This was interesting. But let's say if there is no nebular, this had no impact. I would have to ask who created the model what so the wind speed, of course, is also affecting, because they have a lot of wind energy.
And it probably affects in a negative way, so...
So the more wind you have, the more you source from your windmills,
And you
and
have less...
the carbon emission would be decreased, because you need less energy from fossil fuel.
Thank you.
I have a question. What do you think the technologies such as direct air capture, could they mitigate this problem in the future, or this is for longer terms?
So air capture, what?
Direct air capture, when the technology which takes CO2 from the air and stores underground.
Yeah, so this is a personal view. I read some good articles on it's called geoengineering, what you're talking about. So there is an idea that you put iron into the water, for instance, that you put plankton, which creates a lot of catches a lot of carbon emissions, and what you mentioned that you get the carbon out of the air. There are also various solutions. So one solution is to mirror the solar energy. So there are really some quite innovative ideas on that. What the conclusion of the scientific world is, to my experience, is that they say this is quite dangerous if you do it on large scale, because you can even create an ice age with that. If you're not aware of what you're doing. So you can experiment this, and you can do your research work, but for global deployment, this is too early.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for an interesting presentation. I have a question. One is, can you comment on what type of market structure is required to have these prices change according to the demand, and whether the models basically work with more free economy, electricity markets, etc. And so policymakers, how they need to adjust their regional market in order to get the best out of this. And the second question, what do you think about the energy potential in Armenia in terms of hydropower storage?
Okay. Thank you. Very good questions. Let's start with the market. My personal view on this, which is backed by some of the studies, is the key question is if we have a carbon tax. this is the decisive factor for the market, so if you want to monetize it. So this means, I personally believe the carbon tax will come at some point, maybe not this year, not the next year, but it has to come because we have these ambitious goals and you need to create incentive that people reduce their carbon footprint. So this means the moment you have a carbon tax, every AI solution that helps you to reduce carbon dioxide is basically measured in gold because it relates directly to profitability. The challenge is, of course, on the market side, if you just have a solution that helps you to reduce your carbon footprint, for the most people, it's not so much relevant unless they have, of course, personal ethical views. But in the end, you need to have an incentive for monetization. So people would use it more when it would hurt them financially. So this is what I see on the market. I had a very good discussion also about the application in Armenia, because you were also interested on the different markets. So, and there was one good statement from someone, and he said, from a ministry, and he says, well, poorer countries like Armenia, which we are still, they don't care so much, of course, because a lot of statement from poorer countries is richer countries have to reduce the carbon footprint. Why should poorer countries do it? And here the question is, of course, often more, do we run out of fossil fuels? And the question about hydropower, I think, so here I'm not the expert, but it's most likely the hydropower is in certain regions, so I think more interesting than in other regions. So I can imagine in diligent area or where we have more water, it's definitely interesting. Also, we have waterfalls, so there is definitely application of water power, but unlike, let's say, larger countries where you have larger rivers, of course, it's not that big as other things. But that's more my personal view.
Thank you.
What do you think? Thank you for your talk. And what do you think is the most important and the most promising problem in sustainable energy which can be addressed in ML, in your subjective view, globally, not in Armenia, but for the whole world?
There are so much things.
So what is your favorite one? And what is like with the largest impact?
My favorite is what we are doing here with increasing the output of renewable energies. The most neglected one is maybe nuclear energy, because I have been talking with a lot of experts in the energy sector, and everyone says, okay, people oversee nuclear energy as a contributor to zero carbon tax. It's maybe not the most popular one, so it's also not my favorite one, but I think it's the most important one because it's completely overseen.
But what do you think about transportation and storage? Because we have a lot of hydropower, but we cannot transport it to the people for consumers.
Hydropower is, of course, also important. Clear. If I have to rate it, of course, it's difficult because there's the challenge I perceive in sustainability, that the landscape is huge. So because you produce CO2 emissions with every small detail, so it's really difficult to say there is one solution that kills it all. So this is the point. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do we have one more question?
No, I think no questions. Thank you very much.
Yeah, also thank you very much, and yeah, feel free to reach out if you want to hear more about it, or you can always contact me here also. Okay, thank you very much.